Let's talk about some of the challenge that some of them also speak about when the few that go through those training, access to credit. And then it takes us to the role of the banks, the banking industry. There's always been that criticism that the banks don't actually perform that core function of banking as they see in other climes. And then double-digit interest rate, it's going to be killing. Many of them say they can't just afford it. How do we sort that challenge out? Starting with the interest rate.
Okay. On the interest rate, I really don't understand why interest rate is double digit in Nigeria. In a world where in Japan you have negative interest. If you give a bank in Japan money to keep for you, they will charge you for keeping it for you. In England, interest rates for deposits are as low as 0.5%. In the US, is 0.0 something. If you have a savings account, it's about 0.01 interest. So, and all these countries have single-digit interest for loans. I don't understand why in Nigeria deposit rates are double-digit, lending rates are double digits, and they're very high. In fact, if you borrow at 25%, what that means is that in 4 years, you will pay double what you have borrowed.
Which economy survives like that?
There's no way the economy can survive. So I'm still finding it difficult. Maybe economics can help us here. Why our interest rate is double digit and we're a small part of the bigger world, in a world where some countries have negative interest rates and others have below 1% as interest rate for deposits.
To the extent that we then have special intervention funds from the CBN for certain sectors. You know, one of them wonders, so is it that other sectors?
But when we begin to have special intervention funds, it comes to rationing kind of thing. I don't think that that's the way it should work. CBN shouldn't be involved in intervention fund. The economy should be structured in such a way that with the interplay of forces of demand and supply and everything, interest rate should be low. They should encourage the banks to reduce the rate at which they take money and also the rate at which they lend money. However, we have peculiar problems. We have a mono-product economy. Most of our foreign exchange comes from a single product, oil. Now, the price of that product is volatile. It goes up, it comes down. And that means that the supply of FX goes up, comes down. But more often than not, it comes down. And when it comes down, the price goes up. And when the price goes up, because we depend on it for everything, inflation goes up. And so if inflation is going up, you find out that the man who has money wants an interest rate that compensates him for that inflation. You know, so it becomes a very vicious cycle.
Yeah, this vicious cycle, don't you think it would have been broken if the banks had gone your way of saying, perhaps let's do it the way every other country is doing it, single digit, because it definitely would have been able to stimulate other sectors. Maybe someone who is into maybe timber, who is into groundnut, into so many other commodity. We would have been able to see 1 to 10 and thousands and even millions of Nigerians getting into different sectors so that we take ourselves off this money economy that we've always been.
The banks can do it, but CBN has to help do it.
How can I help?
The CBN sets the benchmark interest rate. The MRR. CBN sets it. So if CBN sets it at 12%, everything else the banks do will have to revolve around that. CBN sets it because they are worried about other issues. Money supply, exchange rate volatility. You know, so it's a complex management process.
When you talk about CBN setting the interest rate and all of that, the Monetary Policy Committee, when it meets,
they're meeting today anyway.
They're meeting today. What are the things they discussed there? Would they be looking at when you talked about restructuring the economy so that the issues of demand and supply begin to play to help set us on the path we should go? Would they be looking at such things, or would they be looking at shielding? Because that's what it looks like the CBNs are doing, protecting the naira against other forces. Is that what they should be looking at?
Protecting the naira is very important.
I agree.
Because we do not produce most of the goods and services we need locally.
So how do we turn that table around to the point of producing what we need? Instead of always injecting money into there's a lot of money in circulation. How do we turn that table around so that we have more productivity?
No. It comes back to stimulating production by the small and medium enterprises. But I was having a discussion with somebody and I said, maybe part of the problem we have is that the Nigerian economic structure is structured in such a way that there are easier ways of making money than hard work. If I'm going to get into manufacturing now, it's a hard job. One, I'm going to be there all the time. I'm going to be tasking my brain. I'm going to be tasking everything. At the end of the day, the return I will get will be very small. The only satisfaction I will get is that business creates employment opportunities. So more people will be employed. But in terms of making money, I might not make as much money as somebody who is a briefcase businessman. So as long as there are more easier ways of making money in this country, a lot of people will not be willing to challenge their brain to do productive things. It will always be easier to bring things from China, from South America, from South Africa, than for us to make them here.
Isn't that because if you look at the ease of doing business, out of 189 we are 169, and some will tell you, look, that's why it's easier for them to bring in those items. In fact, they make more money off those ones than even the locally produced ones. How do we get out of that quagmire?
We'll get out of it through a mindset change, because it involves all of us. Ease of doing business has several factors. Registration of the business is one of them. Getting permits. Somebody was telling me the other day that he applied for something at NAFDAC, and it took 6 months to get the NAFDAC approval. Think about it. If you are doing business and you would have invested in structures, you would have invested in office space, you would have invested in your manufacturing plant. Now, to get your approval takes 6 months. Within that 6 months, all the investment you have made is sitting idle. If you have borrowed the money from the bank to make that investment, interest is going to be running. So how is that business going to make profit? So ease of doing business will depend on each and every one of us. If you are sitting as an approval officer, don't place a roadblock. Review the thing. If the people under you are the ones creating the roadblock, clear the roadblock. We all have a responsibility to make sure that this ease of doing business thing works. If you need to get a C of O, why are the governors reluctant to issue C of O?
Are they reluctant? Why? Or are they not? Are you sure they even get the files to know that there are C of O's to be issued?
Well, at some point in time, I think one of the governors of Lagos State delegated it to the Commissioner for Land. I think that's what still obtains. Because, governor is very busy. How would governor be signing C of O? Before now, there used to be what is called RO, something for rural land. I'm not sure any local government does that anymore.
A quick one. Is it possible to restructure the economy without restructuring the civil service? Because you talked about ease of doing business.
Yeah, ease of doing business is, it will basically be civil servants.
Okay, so is it possible to restructure the economy without restructuring the civil service?
I'm not sure whether it's the restructuring of the civil service that is the problem, because the civil service structures have always been there. It is the courage and determination to make them work. You know, during the colonial era, were the civil servants not working? Even at that point in time, files used to be carried by hand. Anyway.
Mr. Anyanwu, thank you very much indeed for coming on today.
Thank you, Chamberlain.